get asked a lot, when is the right time to make a decision or to look into senior living options? And I always tell people it's before you need to. And whether or not you ever need to put support in place, take the time to educate yourself. Take the time to sit down with your family and talk through what's important to you in your older years.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I speak with fascinating people from all over the world, from every walk of life, who will inspire you to live with zest. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, and my mission is to bring you optimism about aging and help you make full use of the new opportunities that only come at this stage of life. To find out more about the podcast, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. And while you're there, sign up for my weekly email newsletter, The Insider, where you will get fun and quirky tidbits about the show and my exploits, including when I went python hunting in Florida and my participation in the National Senior Games. And if you love the podcast, I'd be grateful if you shared it with your friends. Our music is courtesy of Judy Banker, who was a previous guest on the show. Find out more at judybanker.com. And our technical director is Stephen Litweiler. Well, at some point in all of our lives, we will have to make senior living decisions, whether for our loved ones or for ourselves. But there are a lot of choices out there, and how are we to know how to navigate these choices? Who can we trust to help us? And what are even the questions we should be asking? Well, Catherine Owens is a nationally recognized senior living industry and aging wellness expert. And her book, Be Your Own Hero, Senior Living Decisions Simplified, offers us clear guidelines on what to consider as you're making these important decisions. She is also the recipient of the Tribute to Women and Industry Award, which honors women who have excelled in their field and made significant contributions to their industry. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Thank you, Nicole. It is an absolute pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited to talk with you because you are really helping people who can be so overwhelmed, so anxious. These are really big decisions. And I think we go into it either for our loved ones or ourselves, just wondering, where do we even start? How do we determine, what's best for us in terms of our living situation, depending on the stage of life we're in? And we're also trying to figure out how to have a good quality of life. Can you talk a little bit about, how you came to this and how you came to write a book about helping people figure this system out?
Would love to, Nicole. So I came about this really by accident, and I say now by luck, but it was not an industry that I was familiar with. I came to it with a healthcare background and moved to a new state and needed a job, and was fortunate to find a job in the senior living industry. And it was fascinating to me. I love to watch people and just human dynamics and behaviors. And I came into the job with a lot of social stigmas and ideas about what senior living was. Just that depressing visual image we have of sitting around all day and not having quality of life. And I soon realized that it was impacting people's lives in such a positive way. It was something that allowed people to continue having quality of life, and not just with care needs, but with social needs and personal opportunities to contribute and to be a part of something and have a sense of community and not feel isolation. And I also realized that it was just something nobody wanted to talk about. And you bring up a really good point that people don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw what was contributing to that is there are a lot of fears and concerns and stigmas and misconceptions, and it keeps people from even having conversations about it until they absolutely have to. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're typically going about this decision process, which is a life changing decision. They're going about it in a moment of crisis. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
whole other layer of emotions on top of it. But it doesn't give them the time to really even think about what's important to them. And so they don't know where to start.
We don't have our best decision making
No,
on board when we're anxious and overwhelmed and in
not at all.
crisis. I
No.
see. So part of your advocacy is you got to start this at a time before a crisis hits.
Definitely. And I get asked a lot, when is the right time to make a decision or to look into senior living options? And I always tell people it's before you need to. And
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you ever need to put support in place, take the time to educate yourself. Take the time to sit down with your family and talk through what's important to you in your older years, what it is that you feel is going to give you quality of life, so that they know and you know really what that looks like and what type of support is going to allow you to continue to have that.
So it's an individual approach. It's not just like, okay, you're 85, having some trouble, around the house. This is what everybody does.
Well, you bring up a really good point. That is an approach that we take, even as industry professionals. That there's these defined expectation or defined ways of continuing quality of life. Staying in our home means that we are independent, and really the idea is to take the time to ask yourself what's important to me, where do I feel that I have needs, and what is going to approach and address those needs. So it is a very individual process. People have different personalities, they have different wants, they have different needs, they have different ideas of what social engagement is, of what staying active looks like. And so it's not a one size fits all. And it is something that people are not prepared for, the emotions that are involved. They're not prepared for maybe some preconceived ideas that they have about it or fears that they have. And even adult kids and family supporters are not prepared for the emotions that come along with this decision.
Talk about that, Catherine. What kind of emotions do you see as families and support givers are discussing this next step?
There are a lot of fears associated with it. And I would say the number one fear that people have or that they voice is that fear of losing independence. And what I have seen over the years is it's really more about a fear of losing identity. The person that they've always been, and coming into a situation of, 200 people in a community and being seen as part of someone's job versus, who they've always been. And one thing I recognized early on is our bodies are aging, but our spirits are not. And we're
Mm-hmm.
holding on to that continuum of, this is who I am. I have 80 years of being an expert on who I am. And the idea that they're going to lose that, not just decision making, but people knowing them for who they are and who their spirit is and what gives them joy, because now they're in, you know, someone's job is to take care of them and help provide that quality of life. And so it's talking through, I always ask people when they're looking at support, what are you hoping to gain by putting that in place? And what is your fear of losing? What are you worried about that you're going to lose by putting that support in place? And just taking the time to identify what is giving them concern, what is causing them a level of ambivalence in being able to make a decision really helps them move forward in whatever that decision is.
This is such a respectful process.
It really is. And at the same time, I feel like people, I've seen people lose that respect or feel that they're going to lose that respect. And an example I'll give is when I'm working with a family, and I'll just use an adult child as an example and their parent, there's this balance of trying to honor their parents' dignity in their decision making process. And at the same time, that child is trying to advocate for their parent and the person that they love. And so it's easy to talk for them. It's easy to want to make decisions for them. And at the same time, as a professional, it's easier to talk sometimes with the support network because they're not digging in their heels as much, or they're more open to support. And it is, I don't know how many times I've directed the conversation at the person that needs to make these decisions. And they've said, you're the first person that's asked me what's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
I can imagine, in all of the busyness, and I don't know the industry like you do, but there's a lot of people to serve. There's not much time. There's not much staff. And I can see how, you'd want to make it really efficient. And talking to the adult child, you may get a lot more information in a shorter time, right? And
absolutely.
I could see, like, I've got someone waiting for me. So let's get this let's get this going. But you're really skipping such a crucial part.
It really is a crucial part. And it validates that you, as a professional that is there to support them through this process, that you care about them. And a lot of, to your point, a lot of this happens because people do wait till there's a crisis. And so you're helping them make decisions based on a present need, a present concern. And so sometimes it is hard to just say, let's step back. Let's take a moment and tell me how you feel about this. And I've had people say, just so you know, I'm going to come kicking and screaming. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't expect anything less. It's change. It's hard. They're having to let go of certain ideas of how they've envisioned this time in their life. And at the same time, oftentimes it is just the fear of change. And once people put in the right environment that allows them to continue thriving, they say, I wish I would have done this sooner. I wish I would have approached this a lot sooner.
Well, it's I can see, and also, reading your book and speaking with you, that it's quite possible that asking and answering these questions would open up a life that is more rich, is more satisfying and stimulating than the previous years.
Absolutely. I see people's worlds open up. And I'll say that in the context of, imagine someone no longer is able to drive and they're no longer able to get out to their bridge group or to their, lunch with their girlfriends every week. The things that have given them that connect to the world around them, take that away, and they're still stuck in that mindset that I have to stay home and I have to live in my home to give me quality of life. When in reality, if they are in an environment that provides what they're missing, such as transportation, all of a sudden they're continuing or able to continue doing all those things that gave them joy and gave them meaning. And so it opens up their world. It exposes them to things maybe they hadn't thought of doing. They try new things, they do new things, they discover new things about themselves because the opportunity is there.
Mm-hmm. Hi, everyone. You may have noticed that Zestful Aging Podcast does not run a lot of ads. That's because I'm just not willing to endorse products that I don't have total confidence in and that I don't use myself. So it really means something when I tell you that after I interviewed Dr. Bill Rawls on cellular health, read his books, and learned about his high standards for quality control, I was sold. I placed an order for Vital Plant supplements immediately. I encourage you to check out both of my interviews with Dr. Bill Rawls and hop on over to vitalplan.com. If you enter Zestful15, they will give you a 15% off of your first order. I'm really excited for you to try these products. I think you'll be very impressed. Now, back to the show. One of the things that you've done, which I think is so helpful, is you have amassed a series of very specific questions for people who are looking for housing options, either for themselves or for their loved ones. Can you go through some of those very specific questions that we need to ask?
Yes, great point. One thing I recognized early on is you go online and you look for these lists, of how to research your options and questions to ask. And it's all things like, do you provide transportation? Do you provide housekeeping? Do you provide on-site care? Every place does that. But how they do that is what is going to align with what's important to you and what differentiates one service from another or one community from another. And so giving people questions that dive a little bit deeper, instead of saying, do you have on-site nursing? What does your on-site nursing look like? And even basic questions at the very beginning with my book, I just start with questions like, what does independence mean to you? What is the decision you're trying to make? Sometimes people recognize they need to make a change and they don't really know what that is. What's keeping you from making a decision and what's pushing you towards making the decision. Just things that, as you said, it's difficult to have conversations. One of the main feedbacks I've gotten is that the questions help facilitate those difficult conversations. So it's not about necessarily jumping to the care or the services or the need. It's taking the time to say, what is important to me? The other thing in my book, I have a chapter specifically for the adult child and the supporter, the family support, because they are more often than not part of the decision process. And as I mentioned earlier, trying to balance that idea that it has to be mom's decision or, I can't tell them what to do. Asking questions like, how has mom made decisions in the past? I had a gal that she had lost her husband and she was moving into a community and she fell in love with a particular apartment. And she kept asking her daughter, well, what do you think? And her daughter said, well, mom, this has to be your decision. And she said, I know, but what do you think? I asked this gal, how have you made decisions in the past? And she said, I didn't make the decisions, my husband did. She was needing her daughter to validate that she was making a good decision because she hadn't made significant decisions on her own in the past. And so there's questions like that. How have significant decisions been made in the past that really help a person and a family understand how to approach this decision process and any decision process?
So there's a lot of attention to detail here, attention to history, attention to the family psychology.
Absolutely. And I see that come into play. The family dynamics and psychology come into play and when this decision is being made, and especially when it's being made in a crisis situation. And I feel you could appreciate that, Nicole, just in what you do in your profession. But anytime there's crisis or fear or concern, it does bring underlying fears, concerns, dynamics into play. And so one of the things I ask people at the very beginning is, what is motivating you to consider putting options in place, whatever that is? Because when those fears, those concerns, those dynamics come into play, it's a good opportunity to go back to what is motivating you, to go back to the focus of, we need to put this in place so that mom has the best quality of life, and not get off track with, I have 8 siblings. I'm going to guarantee you there's going to be 9 points of view on what is best for mom and dad. And the reality is, we need to focus on what's best for mom and dad, not what we feel as individuals. So there is a lot at play. And again, one of the most important reasons why we need to have these conversations before an emergency hits, so that we really go through and take the time to define, what does that look like? What are my concerns? How can I work through those? And research your options.
And how does your role work here? Do you train the staff at nursing homes or care facilities on how to have these conversations?
Yes, and not just staff that's working with in senior living communities. I've worked with social workers in hospitals that are doing discharge planning. I've worked with social workers with insurance companies that are getting calls from their members about what to do or how to approach something. And my background is senior living sales. I hate the word sales because it is about life decisions, and it's about a personal decision process that I have seen is very similar for everybody. And again, why I wrote the book is to help people understand you're not alone. This is a really typical emotional process. The details vary about what's important to you. But anybody that is supporting someone through these types of decisions, counselors, social workers, professionals, family members, neighbors, it gives them an opportunity to understand how to do that.
And there's a big part of this, as I'm listening to you, is having empathy and
Yes.
also compassion.
You bring up 2 key words. As I got into the training aspect of working with individuals that were in a supportive role, the first thing I realized is that you cannot train empathy and compassion. And it is something that, and people can develop those skill sets, but it is something people don't recognize that is critical and important. And it's the ability to put yourself in their shoes, to acknowledge and affirm their fears or their feelings or their concerns. And, I had a gentleman who had to make a move due to a medical concern into an assisted living. And when I talk about loss of identity, he had lost his spouse, his best friend, his partner. He had given up driving. He had lost his pharmaceutical license, all of these things that were part of who he was. And now he was forced to move from his home because he needed support and care. And the son, who was, in the state of having to make a quick decision and trying to do the best that he could with what he knew, he said, Dad, life is about loss. Deal with it. And sometimes we don't recognize that, they just need to be validated that this is hard and this is not how I envision things. And it's okay to be upset. It's okay to have fear. It's okay to say, I'm struggling with this. And one thing I when I train staff is, a lot of times behaviors come out or complaints come out when someone's living in a community. And oftentimes those are valid. The food isn't great. And sometimes it's just because they've lost control or they feel like they've lost control. And it comes out in other ways, as far as maybe how they treat the staff or approach the staff or,
Mm-hmm.
find complaint with something. And it's amazing when you just take the time to ask a question. Why is that important to you? Help me understand why you feel that way. It's human nature. We all want to be heard. We all want to be validated. And it's easy to get caught up in trying to do the best we can to provide care. And we forget about how important that other aspect is.
The emotional aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Are there, I mean, you're talking to a psychotherapist, but are there groups or are there initiatives when people enter some kind of care, they leave their homes, is there anything about, hey, this transition can be tough? Are there groups or how is that addressed as people come in and leave a lot of what they've known behind?
You bring up a really great question and a really good point because this is not something that's apples to apples. And again, when you get caught up in the questions of do you provide housekeeping, transportation, or you focus on, um, you know, this place is $200 less a month, or you're making a decision quickly, it doesn't allow you the time to differentiate communities. And there are companies and communities that do that really well, that they recognize that it is a transition. And I always say it's kind of like going to a new school. You're the new kid
Mm-hmm.
in town.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who to sit with or are people going to like me. I mean, those intrinsic needs that we have at every age, you're lost. You have new routines. It's like moving to a new town. And so some companies do it really well where they recognize that and they have welcoming committees. They have programs in place with all the department heads that help guide a person through what that looks like. And things I love, like welcoming committees, we all have the need to feel like we're still contributing and adding value and giving back. And a lot of times, residents in these communities, they want opportunities to do that. They want
Mm-hmm.
opportunities to say, hey, I've been there, I've done that, it's hard. And they take it upon themselves and have the support of the staff to really become that buddy and that transition specialist for new residents that are going through what they've been through. And
Like
there it,
mentors.
exactly. And there is value in peer-to-peer understanding. All of us
Mm-hmm.
want, I mean, you talk to someone and they've been through what you've been through and you're like, you get it. You get it. You know what I'm talking
Yep.
about. You know what I'm feeling. And there's value in that.
Absolutely. Oh, that sounds like a very important part of this for helping people feel welcome, comfortable, lowering their anxiety. And of course, that's all good for physical health too,
Yes. Hmm.
if they're less
The
stressed.
Yes, emotional well-being is, again, it's easy to look at the physical needs, but the emotional well-being part, um, everyone wants to feel valued. They want to feel important. They want to feel like they matter, and that's where researching communities, taking the time to ask, how do you help mom transition? How do you go about the fact that mom isn't very social? And it's hard for her to just put herself out there. And so those are the types of things, if you've had the conversations of what are my concerns, what's important to me, you're prepared to go into a community to meet with them and say, this is what I'm concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys address that? How would you support me with that?
Mm-hmm. It comes to mind, and I hope this doesn't sound dismissive or not respectful, but it comes to mind like helping your child choose a school or you choosing a school or helping your child choose a college, for example. I mean, some of our kids would be better at a small liberal arts college close to home. Some want to go across the country to a huge university. Some want to go to Canada or another country to study, that you have to identify who that person is and help them make a choice that best fits with their how they're built and their disposition.
You nailed it. I love that example. And I'll share an example with you. It's really easy to get excited about it, your own college community, whatever it is, because you believe in it, you see the value in it. And oftentimes it's because it aligns with who you are as a person. And so I was with a community that had probably one of the best meal plans that I felt I had ever seen. Oftentimes people want choice. They want to have the ability to have something made to order. They want to be able to eat whenever they want. And this particular company really had nailed that. They had it in place. And so I was talking with a gentleman and telling him about this. And he just looked at me and he said, that isn't for me. He said, my wife had dinner ready every night at 6 o'clock. That's what I want. I want to know what to expect. And I loved whatever it was she made. And so understanding, again, the simplicity of what makes them feel cared for, what makes them feel structured, what makes them feel that you care about what's important to them. And
getting your own ego out of it.
Yes. And not everybody is wired the same. And not everybody, again, looks at social the same or, value the same way that you do. And so when you take the time to really differentiate each community, I have seen people walk into the most amazing, prettiest penny community out there and say, this is not for me. And they walk into a very small, cozy, intimate, it might be 30 years old, but another environment. And they say, this is me. I can see myself here. This feels comfortable.
Where's the garden and where are the dogs?
Exactly.
That's going to be my question.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting because I laugh at that because one of the questions I ask people, what do you enjoy doing? And oftentimes people say, well, I used to. It's the used to's. It's the gardening. It's the walking your dog. What do you need in place to be able to do those things that you have always loved that you're no longer able to do? Maybe because of mobility or because of lack of transportation. And so it's not a one size fits all. That activity calendar is not a one size fits all.
That's just so important, so profound. Like, who are you and what do you need? Because it's different than what would I need. And just asking the question. I mean, I can imagine this having ripple effects on the family dynamics about, we didn't really know this about mom. Or I guess I didn't understand my husband was so, needing this, and this. I guess I never really thought about it. Hello, all you zestful listeners. I can't wait to tell you what I've been working on in between interviewing powerhouse guests. I'm putting the final touches on my new web course about how to age with courage and vitality, based on science and my 30-year experience as a psychotherapist. The course is full of super practical and doable activities, and it will help you be more optimistic about aging, just like my dogs who are wrestling right now. I cover all the hot topics such as exercise, mindset, eating, relationships, and leaving a legacy. And there are bonus interviews with the lead nutritionist at Syracuse University and an over 55 tennis player with an immune disorder who played in the national championships in Florida. But I have one problem. I'm struggling with a name. So here are a couple I've been playing with. Zestful Aging, creating a healthy mind and healthy body. Or Zestful Aging, creating the rest of your life. So I really need your help, listeners. If you come up with the name of the course that I choose, I will give you a shout out on the podcast as well as list you in the credits for the course. And you'll get a t-shirt with my brand new logo that's just hot off the press. So send all your great ideas for my course to me at zestfulaging@gmail.com, and I can't wait to see them. Thanks so much.
You bring up, I have to share this, Nicole. You bring up a really good, just a personal example. A couple months ago, my husband and I and my sister-in-law were helping, my in-laws research their options. And my father-in-law, the night before we were going to go tour some communities, I'm asking him all of these questions, taking notes. And he is someone that is at 90 years old, is still running the town. And that's who he is. My mother-in-law, she likes to be at home. She's a homebody. She likes to just read and watch what's going on outside. And so he's telling me, well, I need to be able to have this, and she needs to be able to be comfortable and be at home. So we start touring these communities, and one particular community had all of these amazing social activities and amenities. And the initial thought was he was going to be excited, but she really wouldn't care. She came alive. She came alive. And, that for the next 24 hours, she would just say things like, I love that if I was to walk down the hall and see Susie doing a puzzle, I could just join her and have a conversation with her. And my husband, my sister-in-law, we're all going, who is this woman and what happened to mom? Because we had all just assumed mom just loves being a homebody.
Yeah.
And she maybe didn't recognize how excited she could be to have friends and neighbors right outside her door.
Oh my goodness. Like the good old times in being in a dormitory,
yes,
where you could just go into each other's room and say, oh, can I borrow the sweater? And, you're kind of brushing your teeth together and walking to breakfast together. It sounds like what you're saying. And this, I'm sure, is very paradoxical to what most of us thought originally, is like you are giving them an opportunity actually to improve their lives, that make it richer, make it more tuned to their needs. It's not all about like, you're going to leave your house of 40 years, your neighborhood, all of this. But it sounds like what you're trying to do is flip it and say, yes, there are losses. However, let me introduce you to Susie. She's really good at puzzles and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And that right there is what started my whole path of advocacy and education, because I did see it improve people's quality of life. I did see people have a bounce up in health because they had these things in place that are just intrinsic needs. And, I see someone that I work with that was isolated, that didn't have transportation, that had lost their best friend, their spouse. And I see them in a community, having their morning coffee, sitting at the table with a bunch of guys talking about current events or, whatever it is that day. And I always think, if they were still in their home, who would they be talking to today? And so it's things like that we all need at every age. And I've had people come to me that have all that in place, and they don't necessarily need that community setting or that the dorm setting, as you put it. And that's why it's important to list out what is it that I need to have these things that are important to me. And that's how you really start putting into place a plan of action. And so we've been taught to think aging in place. I need to age in place to have quality of life. And I always take the approach of, what do you need to put in place to continue having quality of life? And that's different for everybody. As you said, one kid might prefer this setting and another kid might prefer this setting. And two people are alike. No two
Hmm.
people have the same exact needs or interests.
It strikes me that in some of our lives, this may be the first time we sit down and say, what is really important to me?
We're well, and I would guess this about you, but especially for people that are naturally taking care of other people,
Hmm.
as wives, as parents, as fathers, or in business, we're taking care of other people's needs, and it's almost like we feel guilty sometimes taking care of our own needs, or saying that I need this. And I see it a lot with spouses when one person has a need and the healthy spouse feels like it's their responsibility to take care of them. And at the same time, it's impacting their health, it's impacting their well being, the stress that it's imposing, and how hard it is for someone to just raise their hand, put up the white flag, and say, I need help. I can't do this all on my own. Or, this isn't what I envisioned. I don't feel quality of life. I don't feel sense of purpose. And we go throughout our whole lives taking care of other people and giving
Hmm.
ourselves permission to say, you know what, this is my time, this is about me. And you're right, we're not taught to stop and think that. And so the questions in my book are just very basic questions that start you thinking about what it is you're going to need in place to continue that quality of life that's
And what
important to you.
and what you're willing to compromise. I recently moved about a half an hour away from Syracuse, and one of the things that I realized, I mean, I kind of knew it, but I realized I cannot be more than a half an hour away from my tennis friends because it's my lifeline. It's the socialization, it's the exercise. It's like my home away from home. I've been part of this community for, I don't know, 20 years. And, our winters are terrible in upstate New York. And I thought, we cannot look a half an hour outside of this area because I need to be able to drive to tennis regularly, even if the houses are maybe not as interesting or maybe if they're more expensive or whatever. And it was really different for me to just zoom in on that and say, this is non-negotiable, and this is where I need to kind of set the parameter for where we're going to look at houses. And it was interesting. I mean, as someone who thinks about these kind of things as a psychotherapist, to really be that explicit was different for me.
Yes, it's not about, what kind of view does it have? Is it,
Mm-hmm.
a new home with this type of appliances or finish
Right,
work?
right. It's like, where are my girls?
Exactly. And that is, if you think about all of the older adults that are moving to be closer to kids, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they're moving away from that hairstylist that they've had for 20 years that's part
Yep.
counselor, part friend, and you know, all of those things that are that sense of community.
Yep.
And sometimes moving into a community fills that void. It gives them that community. And oftentimes people don't recognize it, but when they go through a loss, when they go through being sick, I saw this with COVID when everyone all of a sudden is isolated, not by their choice. How important, even if they couldn't, they had to stay 6 feet apart, but how important that infrastructure was of feeling a community around them.
I bet.
And so I call those the intangibles. You can list out these are all the needs or the cost, cost comparison of this option versus this option. But what you just described with your tennis friends, those are the intangibles that you cannot put a dollar sign on. And those are the things that give you quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it can be illuminating to really clarify that. I mean, I knew that it was an important part of my life. I knew that, I have a place there. It's like Cheers, when you come in, oh,
Yes.
hi, they all know you.
Everybody knows your name.
Yeah, that's right. And your weaknesses and what
Yes.
your backhand's a little wobbly or whatever. It's important, but then to really articulate, I can't live, quality of life. This is number one or number two, whatever. So I think that's such a great exercise for all of us, even those who aren't, at the point of having to make these decisions. But it's such important work, Catherine, and I so appreciate you talking to us about it today.
Well, I appreciate you having the conversation with me. As I said, my goal is to get people to have this conversation or to start thinking about it. And you just brought up a very good point. I mean, this is important at any stage in our life, not just, in later stages of our life, but these are questions we should be asking ourselves to help maintain quality of life at every age.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Where can people find out more about you, what you do, your books, and all of your initiatives?
Well, my website, it would be the easiest way, catherineLowens.com.
Okay.
And that speaks to my support and consulting and training with companies, as well as just individual family support and consulting as well. My book is available there. It's available on Amazon. I offer it at a discount on my website. The whole point of this book is just to get this resource into people's hands. And so it tends to be one of those books that people say, I wish I would have had this sooner.
I'm not surprised to hear that. Very
Yes.
clear, very helpful, to the point. Yeah, super helpful. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you. It has been such a delight to talk with you and just your approach on, just understanding this and the help that you do for people as well.
Oh, well, I think we both love what we do. That comes through loud and clear.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. It's called Too Much Stuff. And Too Much Stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical. It's realistic. The lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long exploratory, super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety. So being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.